Hey everybody, welcome back to Young Engineers of Today. Apparently featuring an entirely new cosmetic upgrade to GoToWebinar. Anyway, hopefully everybody's doing all right. Hopefully you had a good couple of days, and hopefully you're ready to continue with model rockets. We're going to go over recovery systems today, but it's not going to take very long. So actually we're going to make a diversion into OpenRocket so you can see how these things might affect the flight of the rocket. So we'll spend some time learning about OpenRocket, messing around stuff with that, and then we'll probably go back to your regularly scheduled model rockets presentation and get some more done there. Yes, but it's got a very, very low overhead. There's actually it should be even lighter weight than SketchUp and stuff like that. So that should be good, at least. Should be. At least the last time I used it, it was. It's a very lightweight program because most of it involves graphing. But anyway, oh, gotcha. Okay, well then, if that's the case, then don't worry about it during the lesson because we won't really be able to spend a whole lot of time working with it today anyway. You can download it sometime this weekend or something like that in preparation for Monday. Yeah. We'll probably spend a fair amount of time getting it set up and everything. And I'm sorry to hear about that, Jacob. Hopefully you've been feeling better. There's been a definitely some sort of bug going around, that's for sure. I know somebody else who does who has a teaching gig as well, and they've noticed that a lot of their students have been sick for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, okay. So, oh yep, that'll do it. Fevers and headaches and stuff, just general aches and pains. Yeah. So on Monday, we went over model rocket engines. And that was, like a fair amount of math, technically, motors, whatever. But we, went over a little bit of the physics aspect of it with the whole Newton's third law. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the motor shoots thrust, basically directs gases downwards, and the equal and opposite reaction in this case is the rocket going upwards. Went a little bit over there. Sort of an equation that can show you kind of give you an idea of how fast a rocket will accelerate. If you know basically how much air a model rocket motor will move and how quickly it will move it, so the mass and the acceleration, you can figure out how quickly your model rocket will accelerate. Of course, you need to also know the mass of your model rocket, basically how much how much stuff it's made up of. Loosely speaking, you can figure it out from the weight, but regardless, using those two things, you'd be able to figure out the acceleration of the rocket, or three things, I guess. The mass and the acceleration of the gas, as well as the mass of the rocket. You can figure out the acceleration of the rocket from the motor that you use. And as we went over, it increases linearly. So, if the rocket's mass is given a totally just random number of 150 newtons for the force on the gas, if you have a 2 kilogram rocket, you know that the rocket's going to be accelerating at 75 meters per second. So every second, it's going 75 meters a second faster, which is 167 miles an hour. but if it's heavier, it'll be accelerating more slowly at a rate of 30 meters per second squared. And if it's double that mass, it will be accelerating at half that rate. So it's a linear relation. It's in that sense, it's very easy to sort of estimate what it's going to be if you know what some of it's like. If you know what some of the results are going to be as you increase the mass of the rocket, you'll be able to get an estimate of how much that's going to affect the acceleration. Then we talked about how to read motor classifications or designations, whatever you want to say. For instance, the C63 here refers to, well, three different things. The C refers to the size of the motor, or the total impulse of the motor, but also the size of the motor. And each letter grade is twice as powerful as the previous one, excuse me. So you've got A, and B is twice as powerful as A, D is twice as powerful as B, or excuse me, 4 times as powerful as B, because C is twice as powerful as B, because I know my alphabet. Yeah, they go up to O, at least for model rockets, or as far as model rockets are concerned. That might even just be like an L-class motor or something like that that person is standing next to. That might not even be an O-class. But regardless, these classes actually increase all the way up to beyond model rocketry, all the way up to excuse me, I am having a hard time with words today. All the way up to actual, like NASA rockets and stuff like that. The Saturn V is considered an 8Z. So, the main engine on that one was pretty dang big. High power model rocketry is a whole different beast from hobby model rocketry. High power model rocketry requires some extra hoops to jump through, like you need to talk to the FAA and stuff like that, and you need to be a lot more considerate in your rocket design and things like that, because you're basically launching a small missile that just doesn't have any payload on it. Anyway, so that's the letter grade. Then the number directly after the letter represents the average thrust, or how much power it puts out at any given moment versus how long it puts out the power. If it has a very low number, it's a low amount of thrust, but it lasts for a long time. If it's a high number, it has a high amount of thrust, but it doesn't last for very long at all. And that's just essentially how quickly it's burning through its fuel, Then you've got the last number, which is after the dash, which represents how long a delay there is before the ejection charge blows. So it tells you how long the delay charge is in the motor. And that number just basically directly translates to seconds. So A10-3 is has got a delay charge of 3 seconds. B6-4 has got a delay charge of 4 seconds. D12-5 has a delay charge of 5 seconds, and so on. You get the idea. And that sort of gives you an idea of maybe where to start when you're thinking of a motor for your rocket. Talked a little bit about impulse, which is basically just the amount of force over time. Then, so that was all in motors. So we talked about how to make the rocket go up and how to get it to go up straight and reliably. Now it's time to talk about getting it back down. Now here's the nice thing. I mean, the planet that we live on does all of that hard work for us. I mean, it comes down on its own pretty well. The tricky thing is getting it to come down safely enough to be able to recover it. So we want to be sure about that. So, there are a number of different recovery systems that we could utilize. Now, on the other hand, not all of them are going to be the best solution. Not all of them are, strictly speaking, recovery systems, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But at least you can look at what options you have in order to make an informed decision on what you might want to set up for your rocket. So yeah, different recovery systems. The most common one is definitely parachute, but there are more of those available to you as well. And this is just sort of some pictures of some of the more popular or interesting recovery methods that model rockets can use to successfully be recovered. The zoom. What zoom? What? Really? That's weird. It shouldn't be. Are you able to see, like, did that just happen? Okay. Anyway, so as you can see here, you've got parachute recovery, streamer recovery, which is, it's got a typo, so it says steamer recovery, but there's actually supposed to be an R in there, another R. Nose blow recovery, tumble recovery, glide recovery, and helicopter recovery. So parachute recovery, I mean, everybody's familiar with it. It's pretty straightforward, and it's easy, and it's safe. Parachutes are tried and tested methods for slowing down a rocket. They're very simple. It's just a piece of cloth or plastic or whatever being used in order to generate air resistance to keep the rocket from falling too quickly. And really, it's deployed from the air hitting it and making it expand. So, pretty straightforward. You do run the risk, however, okay, good, glad to hear it. You do run the risk, however, of the parachute not deploying correctly. If the strings got tangled up inside of the rocket body, either from packing or from launch, or if something gets damaged upon ascent or something like that, you do run the risk of the parachute not deploying correctly. You do run the risk of none of these things deploying correctly, but the parachutes can sometimes be kind of delicate in that sense. So, there's that. Plus, it doesn't even necessarily have to be broken. It could just deploy a little bit too late, and it doesn't really slow down the rocket enough. So there is some time to actually deploy the parachute as well that is involved in parachute recovery that you need to take into account. So yeah, streamer recovery is better for lighter rockets. It'll more reliably deploy, and it's easier to pack. Plus, it's just easier in general. Plus, it can look kind of neato, especially if you give it some nice, like a nice design or something like that. But heavier rockets probably will not be slowed down enough by a streamer. Basically, the streamer is running off of the same principle as the parachute, where it's just using air resistance, wind resistance, whatever it may be, in order to slow the rocket down. It's just less effective at that job than a parachute is. You need a longer streamer in order to do the same thing. But regardless, it is definitely a solution as well. It's just kind of funny to think that a rocket can be slowed down by essentially a piece of paper tied to the nose cone. Strip of paper. So nose blow recovery, it's a pretty silly name, relies on the force of the ejection charge to slow down the rocket in its descent. So basically, at some point the rocket's going to become very top heavy. It's going to point downwards. At some point on its descent, the ejection charge will blow, which will cause the nose cone, not only the nose cone to pop out, but or actually it can also blow while it's still pointing upwards, and then the nose cone flying upwards, pull on the shock cable, which will slow the rocket down because their respective momentums will sort of cancel each other out. But this tends to not be very effective on any but the lightest of rockets, or very strong rockets as well, because that nose cone needs to be able to stand up to the ejection charge. That shock cord needs to be able to stand up to the force of the ejection charge. So basically, you need some very sturdy materials in order to be able to withstand a nose blow recovery that's strong enough to keep the rocket falling slowly. Well, on the bright side, it's pretty dramatic to watch, and if it works out, you don't really have to pack anything, and you can make your rocket, subsequently significantly lighter. Tumble recovery just relies on wind resistance to keep the rocket from falling too quickly to the ground. That's it. Basically, you just let the rocket fall, but you're banking on the fact that the fins are big enough and the rocket is light enough and the rocket is strong enough that it will slow down enough and it will just fall. And that's it. Like that's all tumble recovery is about. So that one's pretty straightforward. Right. Hold on, just wait. Glider recovery deploys a glider that's attached to the nose cone or inside of the rocket. Good if you want to recover the nose cone and anything attached inside, because you can just attach it to the glider, and it looks pretty cool. Just imagine the glider coming out of the top of the rocket after it's reached its apex. But it's very tricky to set up. It's very unreliable. It's basically just not ideal all around, unless you're very confident in it. It's also pretty heavy, so you need to take that into account when you're determining your rocket's mass. And then you got helicopter recovery, which literally just deploys some unpowered helicopter blades around the body of the rocket. Because the thing is, and this is something that helicopter pilots take advantage of as well, if you ever, let's say for instance, if you ever lose engine power in a helicopter, you're actually, as long as you can keep it upright, you have a very good chance of landing safely, because as the helicopter falls, the air hits the blades, which causes the blades to spin, and that actually forces the helicopter to slow down. So the helicopter recovery works off of the same principle. The rocket falling actually makes the blades spin faster, which slows it down more. This is useful because you don't need an ejection charge. You don't need, you don't need to pack anything on the inside. They can. Yes, definitely. It's just getting to that point that's tricky. Because once it's actually happened, once the blades are spinning and everything like that, yeah, it's a lot easier to keep control of the helicopter and control your descent and stuff like that. But it's up until that point you need to basically be careful. You need to get it running properly. But yeah, deploy some helicopter blades and uses air movement to keep the blade spinning and slow the rocket. It's a very strong recovery. If it works for stuff that's, a ton, 2 tons in weight, possibly probably more depending upon the larger helicopters, it's good enough for a rocket that maybe weighs a couple 100 pounds at most. It's very good for larger rockets, and it's very reliable if they end up deploying. But this can also be very tricky to set up, and it can weigh a fairly significant amount on its own as well. So you need to keep that in mind. And on top of that, you need to make sure that all of the blades and everything like that are protected as the rocket is ascending, like they don't get damaged by anything or the forces of the ascent or anything like that. That should not be a question mark. And those are the different recovery types. Well, just a sampling of some of them. And you might be saying, hey, no math. Well, there's always math involved, but here it's a little bit more complex and a little bit less accessible. So, and even less necessary to know. So instead, it more just like, I want to tell you a little bit about these things, and then you pick one based on those descriptions and what you know about your rocket and what it needs and stuff like that, and what you're interested in trying out. So, if you want a simple recovery for a very light and strong rocket, then you can just have it fall, tumble recovery. Tumble recovery sort of relies on the fact that like the rocket will be sort of moving erratically as it's falling. Like in the picture here, presumably it will be tumbling. If the nose cone just points down and it stays pointed down, then the thing will basically turn into a very dangerous lawn dart because it will gain plenty of speed as it's falling. But if it stays like that, perpendicular to, or at least somewhat perpendicular to the movement of air generated by the rocket falling, it stands a reasonably good chance of falling at least somewhat controlled. And there was another thing I was going to say about that. Oh, it's something that skydivers actually do when they're skydiving. You can bleed off or gain speed by either throwing out your arms and legs spread eagle and just sort of using your entire body to slow yourself down, or you can sort of push your arms at your side and sort of pretend like you're Superman, and fly into sort of point towards down towards the ground and fly that way, and that will actually speed you up. And it's that they can do this kind of stuff, and you can slow yourself down enough that it makes a pretty significant difference. And a lot of times it's one of those things that they sort of recommend that you slow yourself down before you deploy a parachute or something like that. But yeah, so that actually does it for this presentation. So let's spend some time going over OpenRocket, which is going to involve a download. If you can't download it today, don't sweat it. Don't worry. We're not really going to make a whole lot of progress in OpenRocket today. You don't have to worry about being left behind or anything like that. Regardless, there will always be the videos as well, just in case. But yeah. So downloading it, what is it? A guide to the user interface, rocket components, which is going to be a little bit of review of everything that we've gone over, building an easy rocket, and complex rocket design and analysis. So here's the deal. It's a SourceForge download. As you can see, this is what the page looks like. It's very much a what's the word I'm looking for? Open source project, not done by some company with a lot of money. But regardless, that's perfect for our purposes. Just something that's very very cheap. Free is very cheap, and very low end. Just go ahead and click on the big green download now button. You'll get a timer counting down. And then it should start downloading. System 32 is a virus. Nice. Good work, Liam. No, it's not a virus. So that'll take a few minutes. Yeah, I know, right? File will harm computer, don't worry. It's not exactly inspiring confidence, but by the same token, it's just because SourceForge is one of those places where there's not necessarily like a trusted certificate, or nor is there on the file as well because it's open source, which is something that a lot of antivirus protections are in place to sort of protect against in order to keep actual bad stuff. But when you run into situations like these, you can, if you know that the file is reliable, you can just go ahead and tell the computer that it's okay and to go ahead with it anyway. So anyway, OpenRocket is a model rocket simulator which lets you build and test. Can't download it right now? That's fine. You can just do it in between classes. No, don't, no. No, Liam, bad. OpenRocket is a model rocket simulator which lets you build and test model rocket designs. It's free and it's open source, so if you're familiar with Java, you can help develop for it because it's made entirely in Java. It uses a lot of the equations that, well, it uses all of the equations that we went over in the previous presentation, previous classes, but on top of that, it uses a whole bunch more that we haven't actually gone over. No, do not delete C drive, you guys. I swear, yeah, that was right around the that was right around the age where people were telling me that, like if you hit Alt F4, you get, it's a secret cheat code or something like that for online games. I fell for it exactly once because I didn't know what Alt F4 did. Estimated download time, 5 minutes. All right, excellent. So yeah, it simulates the aerodynamics of your rocket and returns, yeah, exactly. Those were dark days. Returns real aerodynamic parameters, and it allows you to adjust nearly anything about your rocket, including building material and silly things, just startled my cat, including building materials and aesthetics and things like that. So yeah, that's OpenRocket. We'll let this finish downloading. It's downloaded, but you don't know where to find it. Windows Vista. I don't know about best aesthetics. Did you download it in? Well, there should be. What browser are you using, Brandon? Chrome. There should be just a bar down here with the download right there, and you should just be able to click on it and run the installer, or at least run the program. There's that too. That is true, Liam. Oh, it's probably behind your browser window then. Either that or, yeah, if you're running Windows, it's in your downloads folder probably, which you can very easily navigate to by opening up an Explorer window and then just clicking on the Downloads folder over on the left-hand side. It's usually a very easy and straightforward way to get to your downloads. Would it be the first thing there? You can make it the first thing there. So, okay. What you can do is you can, hold on. So if you've got your downloads, found it? Okay, excellent. I'm glad you did because I'm really having a hard time speaking right now. So we'll give this a couple more minutes. It's almost done. It's got less than a minute left. Dark times. Keep, because we do want to keep it true to form. It said, oh, this type of file can damage your computer. So did it end up opening for you, Brandon? Okay. Everybody who has downloaded it, why don't you go ahead and try to open it and raise your hand if it asks you what app you want to use to open it. Man, I'm really getting used to this new interface. Okay, so we got a couple of hands up, which means that you guys do not have the Java Runtime Environment loaded on your computer. So there you go. That is the download for the JRE, which is short for Java Runtime Environment. Just go ahead and click on Free Java Download. This is actually legitimately the site. Don't worry that this is like some sort of shady third-party thing. This is actually from Oracle themselves, who are the people who made Java. So, it'll probably pop up with like oh yeah, you got to make sure that you're running a specific thing. You just agree and start free download. It will install, or it'll download the installer, and then the installer, Oracle needs to update their stuff. Yeah, basically. The installer, it's probably not going to run very nicely because I have a Java program open. Yep, here we go. So you'll get to the Java setup, and you'll just accept the license agreement and install Java, and that's that. And it'll be super easy. And once you've done that, you'll probably need to like close your browser and reopen it. But regardless, you should be able to open up OpenRocket at that point. And yes, totally not a scam. Just make sure that you do not install the search app by Ask, because that is, if that ever pops up, that should probably not pop up anymore, because they've sort of shied away from doing shady things like that. But you know, yeah, you wanna avoid that kind of stuff, because that's just bloatware that slows down your computer. A lot of times it'll hook itself into other processes and slow them down. The very malicious ones, which are known as malware, kind of is nowadays, with all the additional stuff that you can install from them. But like Yahoo ain't what it used to be. Anyway, no, the search app by Ask is definitely bloatware. That's what I was referring to. If in very bad cases it's malware, and it will track the stuff that you do on the internet, and use it for nefarious means, and you don't really want that. You don't really want. Does it need to be able to make changes to my device? Yes. Yeah, for Java, yes. The Java installer, I should say. Those changes, specifically speaking, are installing the Java Runtime Environment to your computer. And it involves setting up some environment variables and stuff like that for Java later on, if you decide to continue with it and get like the JDK or something like that. And a lot of, anyway. You're in a spicy, in the meme sense, mood today. Just felt like I should qualify that. I did just say that because I toe that awkward line between actually being, like too old to say stuff like that, and still keeping up with it. So, I tried to make the reference, but then I realized it could also be construed the wrong way, and so I had to clarify, which meant that the wind just got taken out of the sails entirely, and it was I would have been better off not saying it. But I ain't 20. But this is the life we live. And it will happen to you. Try another 10 years. Yeah, there you go. Impeccable math. You kidding me? 20 is like right around 20 is peak memeing. That is when everybody is at their on top of their game. OpenRocket is now booting up. Excellent. So, if you've got OpenRocket open, you should be looking at this. This is the user interface. That is oh yes, I see how you arrived at your conclusion. This is this is what OpenRocket looks like. And there's a fair amount of stuff going on here, namely, what, I don't know. But like there are components, there's this button that says new stage, there's a side view, there's this apogee and max velocity stuff, and there's some tabs up here and some tools and things like that. So what does this all mean? Well, let's take a look at the tabs first. It defaults to the Rocket Design tab, but you've also got motors and configurations and flight simulations. Rocket Design is, well, we'll see that in a moment. Actually, let's see it right now. Rocket Design is basically it shows you all of the components on your rocket and subcomponents. It divides them all up into stages, and then the components that make up those stages and the subcomponents that make up those components. And it makes it so that the rocket can easily be reconfigured without having to start from scratch, because it's got sort of a tree-style design to it. So if you want to move a component to another stage, you can just drag and drop it. If you want to move subcomponents to another component, you just drag and drop them, that kind of thing. If you want to reorder stages, drag and drop them. You get the idea. So it makes it very easy to be able to reconfigure your rocket without having to redo everything. The rocket builder part is what actually lets you place pieces on your rocket. The grayed out parts become clickable when the initially clickable parts are added to a configuration. So, we can't add fins until you have a body tube or a transition. You can't have an inner tube until you have a body tube. You can't have launch lugs until you have a body tube, that kind of thing. So if we add a body tube to this, we'll get a whole bunch of other options open. Streamer, shock cord, mass component, parachute, coupler, blah, 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 blah. No worries, Grayson. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. But as you can see, this kind of stuff just doesn't pop up until, yeah, for sure, until we've, added everything to it. So we've got the body tube and the nose cone and then another body tube, and it's all just horrible. So I can hit the delete key in order to get rid of this stuff. Whoops. The building window, as you can see, stuff appeared down here. That shows you what your rocket sort of looks like. And as you can see, it's not terribly, exciting to look at. But, we can also zoom out. We can view different stages. We can view different angles of the rocket, and we can even view 3D views of the rocket. Wow, it's exciting. Look at that. 3D unfinished, 3D finished. That body is basically a toilet paper tube or paper towel tube, one of the two. And it can be a drill. Anyway, so yeah, you can view different different setups for your rocket and stuff like that. So again, go ahead and delete all this stuff. Mash the delete key as hard as I can. Yeah, side view, back view, 3D figure, 3D unfinished, and 3D finished. The flight configuration allows you to view the current flight configuration, which will mean more later on. And then there's the CG and the C, I believe, it's CP. CG is the center of gravity. Oh, Lord. CG is the center of gravity, which is the point about which the rocket will rotate, which is also known as the center of mass. So if you throw any object, it will travel an arc in an arc about its center of gravity. So as you can see in the little example here, this hammer, the center of gravity is right around the head of the hammer. If you throw the hammer will spin about the center of its gravity, and it will move in an arc along the center of gravity. Do we want that to be higher or lower? That's an excellent question, and actually we sort of addressed that in this slide here. So the CP is the center of pressure. It's the point at which lift and drag act on the rocket when the rocket isn't moving straight up. So basically where the, if we were to add this stuff back in, you've got the center of gravity and then you got the center of pressure. Center of pressure is basically as the rocket is you know, as the wind is buffeting the rocket and stuff like that, it will rotate about this point. If we threw the rocket, it would rotate about this point. A stability is the distance between the center of gravity and the center of pressure measured in calibers. 1 caliber is the maximum diameter of the rocket's body tube. So 1 caliber is this distance right here. So we want to make sure that this center of pressure is no further than 1 to 2 calibers from this, parabola, this center of gravity. Yeah, stable rockets aim for the center of pressure to be 1 to 2 calibers behind the center of gravity. As you can see here, there is information it can give you about it. The stability, it's measured in calibers on OpenRocket. And as you can see, the center of pressure is behind the center of mass or center of gravity. So any value higher than generally 2 is going to be unstable. And then you've also got the simulation listener example, which is just the name of the rocket. The length is the rocket's length, the max diameter is also the caliber, and the mass of the motors is pretty self-explanatory. It's the mass of the rocket with motors. And we'll go ahead and, let's see here. We've also got the rotation slider, which allows you to rotate your rocket in the view pane. Not really that useful though, certainly not right now, because we have no need to rotate it. Apogee is just simply a word meaning highest point. So the apogee listed here would be the highest point that the rocket would fly to from the ground in the simulation. It's not available right now because A, we haven't simulated anything, and B, there's no actual motor inside this rocket. Max velocity is the fastest speed. So Mach 1 is the speed of sound. In this image, Mach 0.71 is 0.71 times the speed of sound. So it's almost the speed of sound. That's fast, super fast. And then max acceleration is the most rapidly the rocket flies upwards, like the max that it accelerates. So none of these are here, again, because A, it's not simulated, and B, there's no motor, but those will also be provided when you know, you add that kind of stuff in to your design. And we'll actually make that the lesson for today. And we'll go ahead, we'll make that the lesson for today. We'll get started on building a rocket on Monday and messing around with that and seeing the kind of, you know, output that OpenRocket has and stuff like that, and reading it and figuring it out so that, you know, you guys could work on it on your own if you're ever so inclined. Or, you know, and then you can work on it during lab and stuff like that too. But anyway, that's going to do it for today. So I'm going to go ahead and do the poll questions. After the poll questions, if you don't have any questions, you're more than welcome to head out. And, you know, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.